professional schools of international affairs. We're delighted to be joined on this webinar by Gbenga Ogujimi, and he can correct me when we realize how badly I butchered that, the CEO and founder of LDI Africa. He's here to share with us some information on their fellowship programs and other opportunities. I'll let him tell you more about himself, and we will go through the presentation. If you have questions as we go, please feel free to type them into that chat box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take all the questions at the end. And with that, Gbenga, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to this webinar online. So today I'm going to be talking to you all about LDI Africa, the 2018 cohort of our Emerging Institutions Fellowship Program and opportunities to getting involved. And before I go into the opportunity and the organization, I just want to tell you a little bit background about my story, about myself, and my leadership trajectory to starting this organization and helping to create this program. So I want to premise my introduction with this idea that ideas and talent are universally accessible around the world, but opportunities are not. I was a social entrepreneur several years ago in Nigeria, and I started a startup organization, a social startup organization, with a goal to provide domestic volunteer service. And I kind of had this vision of having a global fellowship, pretty much like Amazon or Google for international service, but I was not able to bring that into fruition. The opportunity I had to realize that was a State Department program. And that program allows for nonprofit leaders the opportunity to come into the U.S. And State Department started to think seriously about how can we increase the exchange rate of international service and utilize the unique perspective of international leaders in the programming of international development organizations in the U.S. So I came to Washington, D.C., and I started serving with a program called Atlas Corps. While serving in Washington, D.C., I realized that there were several opportunities for service here, both domestically and internationally, but several certain communities that might be classified as minority or international or immigrant or diaspora often don't seem to utilize those opportunities as much. Realized that the communities that the African diaspora community that I came into here weren't participating into opportunities like the Peace Corps to go overseas to serve, and not just that, in several communities as well. So I started to think about how can I make a contribution to enrich the diversity of international service in the United States. As a result of that, the vision of LDI Africa came into fruition. And more about this vision, it was premised on this concept that when ideas and people are able to cross borders, the world is a better place. We see this happen in technology. A young tech person in India came to New York, had an idea for an email. Eventually, Microsoft was able to be a part of that. We have internet today. The tech industry is a better place. The world at large is a better place. We see this happen as well in entertainment and sports. Organizations going to lengths in every corner of the world to source talents and ideas to enrich their industry. We also see the same happening in faith. People of faith travel around the world. They share what they believe, their conviction. We are all better off. The world is a better place. But in the nonprofit sectors, those borders are a little bit much more difficult for some people to cross. And we know in the United States, we have the Peace Corps. and the Peace Corps American volunteers go around the nations of the world to serve. They become the experience of America international communities would have. They become that conduit for international service and impact from the United States. In Nigeria as well, in African countries, Nigeria has the largest service program. It's called the National Youth Service Corps Program. Ghana has the National Youth Service Scheme Program. Those programs are designed in such a way that it's somewhat domestic. And this idea of international service and connection, there could be gaps. And looking at how directional service from overseas to Africa could be one-dimensional, as well as in Africa or some continents or some communities. So how can we enrich that diversity? How can we create this marketplace where there is not just a multilateral, but there's a multilateral, multicultural, multi-sectoral free flow of service where we are sharing innovation, talent, and ideas to enrich the communities or the industries that we work with. So that is the premise of LDI Africa, to help to bridge that gap of the lack of cultural diversity and talent in international service. And that was the problem. So we look at, in the United States, how can more communities participate in international service? Also, we look at the industries or the sectors, the service opportunities are being challenged into. How can we expand the same into for-profit and non-profit and government? And how can that human capital be a catalyst for sustainable development and change? So the solution that we have is the Emerging Institutions Fellowship Program. And the Emerging Institutions Fellowship Program is now designed as an international pro bono consulting program. The program primarily works with startup organizations, for-profit, non-profit, overseas in Africa, and it takes talent from around the world and connects them into the businesses on the ground. So again, just a little bit of how the model works. When we started the program, we had about 4 financial investment type of organizations. It was a combination of private equity, venture capital, foundations, agribusiness funds, and the pitch was, how can we complement or supplement your financial contribution with human capital? And we started in South Africa. There's an organization there called Convergence Partners, investing in the ICT space. And then in East Africa, we had 1 Acre Fund, which is agribusiness. In West Africa, we had Rocket Internet, which invests into online platform. Just think about it more like an Amazon. So one of their successful startup there was Jumia. And in North Africa, an incubator out of Morocco called Startup Your Life, working with startup organizations that we started to work with. And quickly we realized that that program, not only was it contributing to the organizational capacity of the organizations that host this fellow, it was also enriching the global competency of the fellows that go through the program. It also provides them an opportunity to have on-the-ground direct fieldwork experience in international emerging market environment. As you know, opportunities, international service and international development, there is a requirement oftentimes for a fieldwork experience. A lot of fellows have utilized this platform to have that fieldwork experience. Some people who might be entrepreneurial whether they are for-profit or social enterprise, also have utilized the program to do some form of an international prospecting opportunity to see what the opportunities are, and even professional interested to build their own personal brand as an industry or thought leader have been able to utilize programs like ours to accelerate that trajectory to industry or thought leadership. By the way, Carmen, I'm making the PowerPoint presentation for my own slide, so the connection keeps going off and on. So if you can move the slides on the screen for the benefit of those who are following, that would be helpful. So, so that is kind of the overview of the program. So I want to go into the benefits of this plan. So the first benefit is the experience that fellows have with the businesses that we work with. They are a combination of for-profit and non-profit, agribusinesses, schools, tech organizations, and now we're beginning to work with some government institutions as well. So that on-the-ground experience is the opportunity fellows would have. And they're not just typical volunteer service programs. These are very innovative organizations that are redefining themselves, and just to be a part of that curve, that growth curve of these organizations. Direct exposure to emerging markets, as I've said, whether it's the goal to have a global experience, emerging market experience is increasingly becoming more relevant, and being the frontier of entrepreneurship, of growth, of development, being able to have that first-hand on-the-ground experience on the continent of Africa. Our fellowship programs are paid. We provide stipend up to $1,200 a month. That would be $1,200. We help to provide the travels, the medical insurance. We provide housing as well to the fellows that go on the program. We work through the host organization to provide ongoing training support in the area of the professional goals of the fellows in a way that is symbiotic with the organizations in which they are serving. Again, fellows would have, or professionals would have, a longer-term interest of experience on the ground, whether it be consulting or employment or entrepreneurship. The program is also able to provide support for that. And being able to be a part of this network of fellows who have gone through the program, and not just our fellows. Right now, we're very intentional about increasing our partnership with other organizations, just creating this global community of change makers, of international leaders or influencers, and being able to be a part of that ecosystem. So in terms of the profile of the LDI Africa Fellow, who do we look for? Now, because the name LDI Africa, I think it's important to highlight that the citizenship of an African country is not a requirement. You don't have to come from there. It will be desirable if there's familiarity or strong interest in the region. The professional level of the fellow is early to mid-stage in the professional, so this could be anywhere from 1 year to 10 years of experience. The average age is around 25 to 35 of fellows who go through the program. And these are professionals who not completely entry level, pretty much like zero experience. We have them to have some form of experience so they can make some substantive contribution to their host organization. Internship experience and fellowships obviously do count as well. And really there is no cap to the level of the experience that they may have. The fields that the fellows typically come from is very broad. They come from businesses, for-profit, social enterprises, international development, pretty much covers everything. Again, our fellowship is not just limited to a particular sector. We work through the financial organization that are funded. So it could be an organization who just invested in a local farm or in a tech company or in a school, and they tell us where they think the need is greatest, is highest, and then we put the fellow on the ground. So that could be any field. And lastly is the interest in emerging market. If the fellow wants to build a longer term career experience in Africa, that is highly encouraged as well. Now, just be more specific about what it looks like. So recently, we are now the technical assistance provider in terms of talent for the United Nations Foundation Global Clean Cook Stove Alliance. It's a bilateral program with so many government involved. UN Foundation is managing that fund, and that fund is funding green organization promoting clean energy all across Africa and some parts of Asia as well. And we are the provider of human capital technical assistance for the African region. So right now, this partnership is going into the third year. We've had more experience in East Africa, so organizations that are part of that network are also in West Africa, East Africa, and pretty much across the continent. So fellows that might have interest in clean energy, agribusiness, renewable energy, power, community impacts development, international development, social enterprise, that would be an opportunity that a fellow will be able to benefit or actually utilize as well. So the next I want to talk about the timeline of the program. The program is going to officially open. We start receiving application October 1. The applications would open. October 11, we're going to have our informational events here in Washington, D.C. And that program, the theme of that program is Global Professionals, Emerging Opportunities in International Service and Leadership. And APSIA is also going to be a part of that program, in addition to TechnoServe and other organizations as well that we are still confirming, to have more direct Q&A questions for not just our program, but other fellowship opportunities as well. November 15th, the application is going to close, so it's going to be open for about 6 weeks. January 25th, 2018, the fellows will be announced. March 1, the fellowship begins. I must also highlight that the start date is a little bit flexible in the month of March. But in the month of March, the fellow will be on the ground. There is possibility for the fellow to be on the ground sooner, and sometimes a little bit after that timeline, based on the agreement, the understanding with the fellow and the host organizations. So there's flexibility with the start date as well. So as I begin to come closer to opening for Q&A, I want to spotlight, some of the stories that have come out of this fellowship, just to, put things more in context and in, just insight and perspective. The fellow I want to look at is Ima Fofana, which is actually our very first fellow in 2012. She is a Sierra Leonean American that came into the program from the World Bank InfoDev program. And she wanted to have emerging market experience in ICT, and she wanted to continue a U.S. experience at the World Bank and have more global on-the-ground experience. And now utilizing the program as an international, career development path. So she was placed in Conventus Partners, an ICT fund based out of South Africa, Cape Town. And she worked for this organization in Mozambique and in South Africa, helping them to just bring in our own unique perspective from the U.S. To the organization and helping them to shape their global strategy and the way they go about expansion. It was development, growth, professional development opportunity for her as well to have on-the-ground experience. And shortly after fellowship, she was hired with the organization to continue to work. And ultimately, she made the transition back to our native country, which is Sierra Leone. And now she works for one of the leading ICT firm in the mobile technology space in our country. So she always had a vision to be an international global professional in the ICT space. She had the U.S. experience, and now she was able to have the on-the-ground domestic experience or emerging market experience, and now towards the industry leadership of our path to be able to realize that goal. The second fellow that I want to talk about is John Ubong Silas. John Ubong Silas is a Nigerian American, first generation, and had experience working with the U.S. charter school system, community college system, and also had some policy work on the Hill experience as well. And again, his vision has always been to be that thought industry leader in the education space, but his experience was U.S. limited. In 2013, he went into the program. He joined a college in Nigeria, in Osun State, Nigeria, where he was able to bring his U.S. experience to the programming of that organization, as well as enrich his own perspective and competency as a professional in that space, having that holistic, comprehensive experience. After that program, we're very delighted that he decided to join us in D.C., back again Washington, D.C., and he now manages the partnership for the Emerging Institutions Fellowship Program. He's currently in Nigeria doing some on-the-ground work for us there. And now he's able to also launch his own personal brand as an international consultant in the education space, helping organizations both in the U.S. and Africa redesign or rethink their approach to education from a curriculum standpoint, from an investment standpoint, from a human capital investment or strategy standpoint. And now he's been able to use that program to realize his professional aspiration. So for me, I think this is the greatest benefit of a program like ours. I said my story, that I came from Nigeria. I had this vision of a social enterprise that will realize the things that LDI Africa does now. But it was a fellowship program that provided me the pathway to realize that. And the few stories I've told about, whether it's Emma or John, also going through the program that came out of that experience to be able to realize their own professional goals. I think that is just the core of the Emerging Institutions Fellowship Program. So I will stop the presentation. I hope the overview, introduction about LDI and the fellowship program was helpful. I also want to mention that we are based in Washington, D.C. We are a nonprofit social enterprise, and our operations is largely in Africa, all across the continent. We also have a service program for both nonprofit and for-profit leaders to come to the United States for their partnerships and growth and development. But our main program is the Emerging Institutions Fellowship Program. At this point, I'm going to end the presentations here and open it up for questions that you might have. For some reason, I'm struggling to get back online. So maybe if Carmen can echo the questions, can relay the questions over the phone, and I'll be able to answer them if there are any. And also, I cannot see the screen.
Thank you, Gbenga. This is Carmen, and I very much appreciate all of the information you've shared with us. We will take the questions as they come, and since I have the microphone, I get the privilege of the first question. Could you tell us a little bit about the application process and whether you have any tips about how students can best be competitive?
Oh, thank you for that. The application process, so we have general essay, short essay questions that applicants would answer. Tell us about your long-term goals, your short-term goals, your leadership story, very similar to typical fellowship or grad school application essay questions. We ask that supplemental includes cover letter, includes the resume. Now, the cover letter, we ask that the applicant apply to the fellowship program and not just one specific host organizations. So fellows might say, you know, I really want to work with this organization in Kenya or that organization in Zambia. At the stage of the application program, we just wanted to apply to the fellowship program. There are subsequent rounds that the fellow would have more insight, more information, and be able to make some specific preference request. But at the initial stage, it's a little bit more generic. So just to have an insight how the application and screening program works. So the application process opens or the application comes in. We shortlist the first round semi-finalists. They go through an informational, a phone interview, a Skype interview with our selection board members. And then we ask them more questions over the phone and just try to establish eligibility for the program. And they are trying to clarify or reinforce that this is not an employment program. This is a fellowship program. Do they know what that means? They're making a commitment of 1 year of service. In some rare cases, 6 months of service, most likely a year of service. So they understand that. They're receiving a stipend, not a salary. So they understand that. So that is what the selection board member reinforce. Then they make a recommendation to the LDI Africa program team. Those who think should advance to the final rounds. Those who become the final rounds, we send this application to the host organizations that considers them for other subsequent rounds of interview. The applicant would receive an email of the organization that have been considered. They have the choice to reject or accept to speak with organization considering them. After the organization's interview, there is a match. They let us know that this is a fellow they're interested in. Then we go ahead and offer them the congratulations, the fellowship, and then we go into travel logistics at that stage. So to stand out as in your application, 3 major things that we look for on a very generic basis. Telling a leadership story, whether it is leadership on campus, whether it's leadership in the community, how you've been able to distinguish yourself in any leadership capacity. We want to hear that. We also want to so we also look out for cultural, cross-cultural competency, whether that might be cultural or international or geographic experience that you might have. That also could be a bonus as well. We look out for that. Communication in the terms of how you are able to articulate your contribution, your skill sets, your goal, your learning goals. I want those to be properly articulated. So communications, cross-cultural competence in leadership are like the overarching skill sets that they require. At least from LDI, Africa stands, the host organization make more specific skills requirement questions, selection or interest. So that is some of the tips for application. I hope those were helpful.
Thank you. And typically, how many applications do you get for each of the fellowships?
We get anywhere from 100 to 200 applications, and we narrow them down to, in some cases, 50 as the semi-finalist. They come down to 20 for the finalist for those who we consider for host organizations. And the class is usually around 10 to 15 times for each of the cohorts. So we do 2 cohorts a year. So they come to about 40 sometimes in a year that become eligible for the fellowship program. But overall, we get around 200 applications for each of the classes.
Thank you. And you briefly mentioned this, but in terms of the length of time of the fellowship, you said 6 months to 1 year. Is it usually, could it be longer than that, or is that pretty much the final time frame?
The standard timeline is a year. Some organizations, very few organizations extend to about 2 years, which is not typical. And also some organizations make exceptions for 6 months fellowship, but the standard is a year.
Great. I see a few people typing, so I will keep asking questions while you all get those in. In terms of skill sets, many of our students come from a variety of places. For students who perhaps do not have African heritage, maybe they're from various parts of Asia or Asian American, et cetera, are there language skills or other things that help to set candidates apart?
So the program is very big on cross-cultural collaboration, and that's one of the strong assets that the program has to offer our host organizations. So we welcome variety of backgrounds or cultural background to apply for the program. Most of the countries they'll be working in, English is the standard language. We have other countries that English is not the official language of the country, but most of the host organizations, the language at the workplace largely tend to be English. Bilingual candidates could be even advantageous. That could be advantageous both for their candidacy as well as for the host organization as well. So we welcome other multilingual skill sets to apply for the program.
Great, thank you. Since the program usually starts before the end of a semester here in the US, would you recommend that our staff should share this more with their alumni compared to current graduate students?
So what I've seen, the students who have been successful through this process are usually those who are in the last stage of graduation, or those who are able to take, and most of the time students would have for practicum, not all as a year, though those who are able to take that year gap. So those who are able to do a little bit of a 3 to 6, 4 months internship, it's a little bit challenging there. So, but those who are already in the final stage, so alumni would be a very good network if we can reach into that. Those who are already seeking overseas opportunities for service and able to commit a year. As I said, we might be able to make some exceptions for 6 months. We'll be able to consider that as well. but shorter placements, like 3 months, could be a little bit challenging. So those are and also in terms of experience level, undergraduates with very limited workplace experience might be better competitive after when they get to the graduate stage, or those who already have work experience and going back to school and need some practicum experience. This would be a great opportunity for them. Very early stage professionals with very limited work experience might not be the best at this stage of their career, given the contribution that they are going to be making, professional contributions they're going to be making to the host organizations.
You've mentioned some flexibility with start times. Many of our students will finish in May and June. Is there that much flexibility for them to begin after they would graduate from their master's program in May and June?
Yes, there's flexibility. The main timeline is the process where the fellows, the candidates are going through application program. They have to apply certain time. They have to get to the interview certain time. The start date is highly flexible. So once there is a match, we are flexible with the start date. As far as the host organization and fellow can reach a timeline that works for them, we are flexible with that, and we've seen quite a number of that happen. So there's flexibility with start date.
That's great. Are fellows able to work in the host countries in addition to their fellowship assignments?
We don't encourage that because the program is a full-time commitment of host organizations. Fellows have taken on supplemental volunteering opportunities to grow professional skills. But those who wanted to have an additional employment, we don't encourage that because it's a lot of commitment, it's a full-time commitment. So we also ask the fellows in the application program to understand that while this is a service opportunity, fellows have been held with the same accountability as that of the employees of the organizations they work with. So they're going there 9 to 5. They're doing more, 40 hours. Sometimes they exceed it. Sometimes it's not up to that, but it's a full-time commitment. Now, a fellow that does consulting work, maybe some kind of online work, we don't encourage that. But if it's in such a way that is complementary to the host organization they serve with, that could be encouraged. That could be allowed, not encouraged. Sometimes some host organization also could decide to even split the time of the fellow with 2 organizations, especially those who are like incubators, those who incubate early stage businesses. So that commitment could be a lot. So it could be challenging to add on an additional professional commitment to the fellowship program.
Can you tell us how host organizations are identified? Did we lose you?
Hello?
Yes?
Okay, I'm right here. So I thought that was there a question?
Can you tell us how host organizations are identified?
So as I said, we go through like a network approach, and because we're a small organization in terms of our team, our capacity, so we focus more on partnering with organizations that have a network, and those networks seems to be more financial, and that could range from foundations. There could also be investment organizations, whether they are private equity or venture capital, even some government programs. Maybe there'd be Power Africa or Fit the Future USAID. or UN Foundation, Clean Cook Stove. We invest more in those partnerships, and these organizations are providing financial capital to projects and organizations on the ground. Those organizations have their portfolios. So they now make recommendation and say, oh, we're supporting this organization out of Mozambique. They are going through this curve. They can utilize the fellowship program, and they help to cover, and that is how our business model works, and they help to support and fund the cost of the fellowship. Some organizations reach out to us, and when especially when we're in marketing, promotions season, and say, oh, we heard about your program, we'd be interested to learn more, and then we vet them for the program. We also have a nominator network, which is like a volunteer community, and this community support us from a selection board to also helping to nominate candidates and also nominate host organizations. And that is the way they make their own donations to the organization. So they help to spread the word out to their community and help nominate organizations to host a fellow. From a staff organization partnership approach, we focus more time in those networks. And that's why I talked about one of the key projects the fellows will be doing now with the Clean Cook Stove organizations. There are also some microfinance type of organizations who is funding very small scale businesses. So most of those businesses at that level are not able to absorb a fellow, so the fellow would work at the organization itself, but providing support to the businesses, those organizations fund or invest into. So that is our model for host organization. Once we identify these host organizations, we now they go through a screening process that for them to understand that this is a fellowship program, and some of them, so there's an onboarding orientation training program. Some of them are just getting involved in fellowship program for the first time. So we try to let them know that is not a typical employment program, although it's pro bono consulting, just trying to understand the boundaries of that. And those who are not able to work with the guidelines that we have and not considered for the program. So what else about? So that is about the process of identifying and onboarding host organizations.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left, so if folks have that last question, now is a good time to get it in. Gbenga, one other question I have: can students serve in the fellowship program and receive credit from their home academic institution, or is that something that you prefer they not do?
They can do that. We can provide whatever we'd help if it's a program that practicum counts into the program, and we're able to provide paperwork for that. Yes, we're able to provide that. We're also able to provide paperwork for those who might be currently in student loan, and they might need to put that on hold while they go overseas to serve, and establish that it is a service opportunity while they are overseas. So those could be put on hold for them. We're able to provide those as well. So we're able to work with whatever needs the fellows might have for the academic or student purposes.
That's great. Thank you. Any last questions, folks? This is the time to speak now, or type now, or forever hold your peace. May I share your email address with my colleagues, or John's?
Yes. So the website for the fellowship program is LDI.org, LDIAfrica.org. the contact email address for the fellowship program, I think Carmen will make that available, but it is John, for the partnership inquiries, is John-Silas at LDIAfrica.org. Program-related questions about application information and inquiries are best directed to Joan, which is Joan, at Joan Lindo, is a vice president for programs at LDIAfrica.org. I believe those will be made available via email to the network.
Yes, I'll share all of that, and with permission, your slides as well as this recording
Yes.
after this event. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This has been very informative, and I really hope that we'll see a number of our excellent APSIA students applying for the fellowship, and that we can continue to find good ways to advance the work you're doing for social enterprise and other development in Africa. Thank you, everyone, very much. We will host our next career webinar as soon as speakers can be identified, and I look forward to seeing you on future events. Thank you and have a great day.